The Goa'uld believed themselves gods, until something arrived that didn't need worship to rule. On a Tuesday afternoon in Cheyenne Mountain, Stargate Command's alarm screamed as an unauthorized gate activation rippled through their systems. The chevrons locked in a sequence no database recognized. No IDC, no origin signature, just 7 symbols burning in an order that shouldn't exist, connecting to coordinates outside mapped space. Major Samantha Carter's fingers flew across her keyboard as readings spiked into impossible territory. Energy signatures that made ancient technology look primitive, space-time distortions that suggested something vast was forcing its way through a pinhole. General Hammond ordered the iris closed, but everyone in that control room felt it. The cold certainty that whatever was coming had already decided the iris didn't matter. You stand in the gate room as the event horizon stabilizes, rifle raised, heart hammering against your tactical vest. Your Airman First Class Marcus Webb, 2 years out of basic, stationed at the most classified facility on Earth. You've seen Jaffa warriors. You've seen Goa'uld system lords draped in gold and arrogance. You've even seen the cold efficiency of replicators tearing through bulkheads. But nothing prepared you for what steps through that shimmering puddle of blue light. A figure materializes, not walking, not running, simply existing where it wasn't a moment before. Skeletal, impossibly tall, robes darker than the spaces between stars, trimmed in gold that seems to drink the fluorescent light. Empty eye sockets burn with pinpricks of crimson fire, and you realize with crawling horror that this thing is looking at you, really looking, seeing through your skin to the terrified animal beneath. The entity doesn't speak, doesn't gesture. It stands motionless as stone while 20 rifles track its skull, while Carter's fingers freeze over her console, while Hammond's voice crackles through your earpiece, ordering you to hold fire. Seconds stretch. Your finger trembles against the trigger guard. The thing's head tilts fractionally, a motion so small and so deliberate it screams intelligence. Ancient, vast, utterly alien intelligence wearing the mockery of human form. Then you feel it. Not sound, not touch. Something deeper. A pressure against your thoughts, gentle as silk and inexorable as gravity. And you understand with soul-deep certainty that this being has already assessed you, categorized you, and dismissed you as irrelevant to whatever purpose brought it across the stars. Your rifle suddenly feels like a child's toy pointed at an oncoming avalanche. Behind reinforced glass, Hammond watches the security feeds with mounting dread. The entity hasn't moved in 47 seconds, hasn't responded to hails, hasn't even acknowledged the weapons trained on it. It simply exists, a hole in the universe shaped like a king. Carter's breathless report confirms his worst fears. This thing doesn't register on their senses the way Goa'uld do, the way Asgard do, the way any biological or mechanical entity should. It registers as absence, as if reality itself is bending around it, trying not to touch it. The ancient gene detector sits silent. The Tok'ra scanning devices show nothing. Even the basic thermal imaging returns only cold, absolute zero where something clearly stands. Hammond's hand hovers over the alert button that would seal the mountain, trap them all inside with this impossible visitor. But something stops him. Perhaps wisdom, perhaps fear, perhaps the bone-deep knowledge that doors and walls wouldn't matter to whatever this is. The silence breaks. The entity speaks, not from where its mouth should be, everywhere at once, in perfect English, with pronunciation so precise it sounds computer-generated, yet carrying undertones that vibrate in your chest cavity, like bass notes from instruments that don't exist. I am Ainz Ooal Gown. I require information regarding this realm's dimensional structure and governing powers. No threat, no demand, just statement of fact delivered with the casual authority of something that has never encountered the concept of refusal. You watch Hammond's face on the monitors, see him processing the implications. This being learned English somehow, knows what questions to ask, understands hierarchy enough to address the obvious command center. It's not mindless, it's not lost. It arrived here deliberately, with purpose, and it's giving them one chance to cooperate. 1. Carter finds her voice first, scientist instincts overriding fear. She asks the entity what it is, where it came from, how it bypassed the iris. Ainz' old gown's skull tilts toward her, and you see her stiffen as those crimson lights focus. I am what your limited framework would classify as undead. It states without inflection. My origin is dimensionally discrete from this continuum. Your barrier was quaint. The word hangs in the air like an insult, though delivered without malice. Pure observation from something for whom Earth's most advanced defensive technology registered as a minor curiosity. The entity's skeletal hand rises, slow and deliberate, and you watch in horrified fascination as reality ripples around those bone fingers. Space bends, light distorts. For a fraction of a second, you see the iris, solid titanium, Earth's final shield against alien invasion, unmade and remade without ever appearing to move. I did not destroy it. Ainz continues, academic now. I simply existed in the space it occupied. Your atoms made room. In that moment, the geopolitical calculus of the entire Stargate program shifts. You don't need a PhD to understand what just happened. This entity bypassed their ultimate defense the way you'd walk through a hologram, by recognizing it was never really there to begin with. Hammond's voice comes through, measured and diplomatic, welcoming Ainz' old gown to Earth, and requesting a meeting to discuss mutual interests. Smart, professional, and utterly transparent. Everyone in this room knows Earth just became a negotiating table, and humanity's chips got significantly smaller. Ainz' skull inclines fractionally, acknowledgement or amusement. Impossible to tell. Your proposition is acceptable, it states. However, I have detected 73 additional dimensional apertures across this planet's surface, and extensive network connections to stellar systems beyond. Before formal discourse, I require baseline understanding of the local power structure. Specifically, those burning eyes sweep the room, and you feel the weight of their attention like ice water in your veins. Identify the entities that style themselves as gods in this galaxy. The question lands like a grenade, because Ainz didn't ask if gods exist. It asked which beings claim godhood, which means it already knows the distinction, has encountered the difference between actual divinity and beings that merely pretend. Hammond and Carter exchange glances, both thinking the same thing. How do you explain the goal to something that opens dimensional rifts and phases through matter? How do you describe parasitic aliens that rule through technology and fear to an entity that radiates power like a star radiates light? Carter takes a breath, begins explaining system lords, Jaffa armies, Hartek motherships, and you watch Ainz' old gown process this information with perfect stillness. When she finishes, there's a pause. Then the entity speaks again, and for the first time you detect something in that emotionless voice. Not quite amusement, not quite disdain, something colder. False gods, it states, definitive as mathematical proof. This galaxy suffers under the rule of frauds. How, and in those two words, You hear the death knell of the Gold Empire. Something has arrived that doesn't see them as threats. Ainz Ooal sees them as problems, and problems, you're learning, are things this being solves with terrifying finality. The briefing room feels smaller with Ainz Ooal in it, not physically. The entity occupies perhaps 6.5 feet of vertical space, skeletal frame draped in those reality-bending robes, but presence, authority, the kind that makes colonels and generals instinctively defer, that makes decorated soldiers check their posture without conscious thought. Hammond sits at the head of the table, flanked by Carter, Daniel Jackson, and Teal. Colonel O'Neill leans against the wall, P90, within easy reach, despite knowing, everyone knowing, that guns stopped mattering the moment this thing walked through their gate. Ainz stands rather than sits, hands folded before it, crimson eye flames fixed on the star charts Carter has displayed. Earth at Bidos, Chulak, the territorial maps of Gold System Lords spreading like cancer across the galaxy. When Ainz speaks, its voice carries that same unsettling perfection, words chosen with mathematical precision. Your species occupies a curious position, technologically inferior to your oppressors, yet you persist. You wage asymmetric warfare against vastly superior forces. Explain. Daniel Jackson adjusts his glasses, academic enthusiasm momentarily overriding the existential dread everyone else radiates. He launches into the history, Ra's original enslavement of humanity, the rebellion that buried the Stargate, the rediscovery, Abydos, the escalating conflict with the Gold Empire. He explains the philosophy. Humans don't have Asgard technology or ancient knowledge, but they have adaptability, creativity, the will to fight despite impossible odds. Ainz listens without interruption, skull angled slightly, as if processing not just words, but the underlying cultural framework they represent. When Daniel finishes, there's a pause. Then Ainz poses a question that cuts to the bone. You celebrate your resilience in the face of overwhelming power. Admirable. But would you not prefer simply overwhelming power? The room goes silent, because that's the question, isn't it? The one they don't ask in official reports. How many soldiers have died buying time? How many worlds burn while Earth plays guerrilla games against gods? Ainz continues, unhurried. I observe your species values freedom, self-determination.
Eyes fix on Ainz, Jaffa, warrior, assessing an unknown threat. You speak of overwhelming power as if it were solution rather than problem. A Goa'uld possess overwhelming power. It has made them tyrants. The statement hangs, challenge implicit. What makes you different? Ainz's skull tilts, and for a moment, you swear those empty sockets somehow convey consideration. When it speaks, there's something new in that emotionless voice. Respect, perhaps. A valid observation. Power without purpose becomes indistinguishable from chaos. The Goa'uld rule through fear and spectacle because they lack substance. They are parasites wearing crowns, dependent on hosts, on technology they did not create, on worship they must constantly enforce. They are, fundamentally, weak. Those crimson flames intensify. I am not weak. I am not dependent. And I do not require worship. I simply am. O'Neill pushes off from the wall, and his tone carries that trademark sarcasm that masks genuine concern. Okay, so you're the big bad undead wizard from another dimension. Great. Fantastic. Love the skull aesthetic. Very intimidating. But here's the thing. He steps closer, and you have to admire the man's courage or stupidity.
We've met a lot of powerful beings, Gold, Asgard, ascended ancients, and you know what we've learned. Power doesn't make right, it just makes powerful. So before we start talking alliances or information exchanges, how about you tell us what you actually want? The question cuts through diplomatic posturing. Hammond looks like he wants to reprimand O'Neill for antagonizing their potentially apocalyptic visitor, but doesn't, because someone needed to ask. Ainz regards O'Neill for 3 full seconds, an eternity in that silent room. Then something happens. The entity's jaw moves, not speaking, not breathing, something else, and you realize with crawling unease that Ainz' old gown is smiling, or whatever the skeletal equivalent is. What do I want? Fascinating question. Candid answer. I do not know. The admission shocks them. Beings with this kind of power always know what they want. Territory, worship, resources, revenge. But Ainz continues, and there's something almost vulnerable in that flat mechanical voice. I was transported to this realm by forces I did not control. My previous existence was. It pauses, searching for words. Complete. I had purpose, subordinates, responsibilities. Here I have isolation in an unfamiliar cosmos. I am, in your vernacular, lost. Carter leans forward, scientist instincts firing. So you're looking for a way home. We might be able to help with that. We have experience with dimensional phenomena, ancient technology that manipulates space-time. Ainz raises one skeletal hand, gentle gesture that nonetheless silences her instantly. I appreciate the offer. However, preliminary analysis suggests dimensional reintegration would require energy output exceeding this galaxy's total stellar mass converted to pure force. I am not returning home. Therefore, I must establish new purpose. Those burning eyes sweep the room. Those burning eyes sweep the room. I observe a galaxy enslaved by fraudulent deities. I possess capabilities they cannot match. The logical conclusion presents itself. I will remove them. The temperature in the room seems to drop. Not metaphorically. You actually see frost forming on the water pitcher at the table's center. See breath misting from human mouths while Ainz stands unchanged. Hammond finds his voice, carefully neutral. Remove them. You mean the Gold System Lords? All of them. It's not a question. Ainz's skull inclines fractionally. All entities claiming false divinity, Gold, others, should they exist. I will assess threats, neutralize them, and establish stable governance structures. This galaxy's chaos offends me. The casual way it delivers potential genocide makes your skin crawl. No anger, no righteousness, just cold calculation. Daniel Jackson jumps in, frantic now. You can't just. There are billions of Jaffa, human populations enslaved across hundreds of worlds. The political complexity alone, you're talking about dismantling a power structure that's existed for thousands of years. The vacuum that creates, the wars that would erupt. Ainz interrupts, not rudely, but with the finality of closing a book. I am aware. I will manage the transition. Your concern regarding collateral damage and systemic stability is noted and appreciated. I am not a destroyer. I am an administrator. Teals rises slowly, and there's something terrible in his expression. Hope. Terrible because hope in the face of something like this might be the most dangerous thing of all. You truly believe you could defeat the System Lords, all of them. Ainz regards him, and when it speaks, you hear absolute certainty. I do not believe. I calculate. I have assessed your documentation of Gold capabilities, energy weapons, force fields, capital ships, numerical advantages. None present obstacles. I have ended civilizations before. Teals of Chuluk, I ended them efficiently, completely, and with minimal suffering to non-combatants. The gold will be no different. It states this, the way you'd state the weather forecast. Matter of fact, inevitable. O'Neill looks like he's aged 5 years in 5 minutes. And after. Say you win, wave your magic skeleton hands and poof, no more gold. Then what? You rule, you leave, you ascend to some higher plane, and leave us to clean up. Ainz turns toward him, and for the first time, you detect something almost like regret in its posture. I will do what is necessary, what is optimal. I have learned that freedom without power is slavery, by another name. Your species values self-determination. Admirable. But first you must survive. I will ensure survival. The philosophical implications can be addressed afterward. The meeting ends not with resolution, but with exhaustion. Hammond tables further discussion, requests time to consult with higher command. Ainz accepts with unsettling grace, agrees to remain in a prepared VIP quarters, while Earth's leadership decides how to handle an undead god offering to commit deicide on their behalf. As the entity exits, escorted by increasingly nervous Marines, you catch Carter's expression. She's running calculations. You can see it. Threat assessment, strategic advantage, moral implications. Beside her, Daniel looks sick, because he understands what everyone in that room is starting to comprehend. They're not deciding whether to accept help. They're deciding whether to stand aside, while something incomprehensible rewrites the rules of existence. The Goa'uld have oppressed the galaxy for millennia. Tomorrow, one of them is going to learn what it feels like to be utterly, hopelessly outmatched. And Earth humanity will have front row seats to watch salvation or damnation arrive, wearing a skull and robes darker than space itself. System Lord Hero doesn't know he's already dead. His Hartek orbits above P3X 774, a minor mining world that produces Naquada for his fleet. 300 Jaffa garrison the surface. 5,000 human slaves work the mines. Standard operation, standard brutality, the kind of casual oppression that's played out on 10,000 worlds for 10,000 years. In his throne room, Hero reclines on gold-trimmed cushions, watching slave quotas scroll across holographic displays. He's the son of Ra and Hathor, styled after the ancient Egyptian falcon god, and he's bored with petty territorial disputes, bored with Apophysis schemes, bored with the tedious maintenance of fear that keeps his empire functioning. When the Stargate activates without authorization, he feels something novel, irritation sharpening into interest. No IDC transmission. His Jaffa report a single figure emerging, humanoid, unarmed, alone. Hero's lips curl behind his golden falcon mask. Finally, entertainment. He orders the intruder brought before him alive. He wants to watch this fool grovel before having him slowly tortured as an example to the slaves below. 20 Jaffa surround an Ainz Ooal gown in the gate room. Staff weapons charged, Ainz center mass. You watch through Hero's security feeds. Stargate command patched into the Hartek systems via Tok'ra intelligence assets, witnessing what's about to happen with mounting dread. The Jaffa First Prime barks commands in gold, demanding identification and surrender. Ainz stands motionless, skull angled upward toward the throne room 4 decks above, as if looking directly through solid metal at Heroj himself. When Ainz speaks, its voice carries through the entire ship, not through comms, not through speakers, but through the air itself, through the walls, vibrating in the bones of every living thing aboard. who styles himself God of the Sky. I am Ainz Ooal. I have come to provide demonstration of the paradigm shift your kind faces. You may choose to engage in discourse, or you may choose combat. Both options lead to the same conclusion. You will kneel or you will cease. The transmission cuts. Silence. Then Herod's laughter echoes through the throne room, genuine and delighted. A madman, some insane cultist with delusions of grandeur. Perfect. Herod gives the order. The Jaffa fire. 20 staff weapons discharge simultaneously, plasma bolts converging on the skeletal figure from every angle. The energy output should vaporize flesh, shatter bone, melt metal. Should. Instead, something appears in the air around an Ainz, a barrier, translucent and shimmering like heat haze, absorbing each impact with barely a ripple. The staff blasts simply stop, energy dissipating harmlessly against an invisible wall that shouldn't exist according to any known physics. Carter's voice crackles through your earpiece, frantic calculations racing ahead of comprehension. That's not ancient technology, not gold shielding. The energy isn't being deflected or absorbed into a power matrix. It's just stopping, like it's hitting the concept of a wall rather than actual material. On the screens, you watch Ainz raise one skeletal hand, fingers spread in a gesture almost gentle. When it speaks, that emotionless voice carries a teacher's patience.
Perfect sequence. Chest, chest, chest. Hissing on some invisible command. No energy discharge. No visible attack. Just skeletal fingers twitching and Jaffa dying. Their symbiotes murdered inside them by forces that don't care about armor or shields or the gods they serve. The survivors break. Discipline shatters. They run, abandoning posts, abandoning duty, abandoning the very concept of resistance. Ainz doesn't pursue, doesn't need to. It simply walks forward, robes dragging across deck plates that frost over where it passes, heading toward the throne room with the inevitability of a glacier. Hebrew isn't laughing anymore. He's watching security feeds, watching his elite guards flee from an unarmed skeleton, and something cold slithers down his spine. Fear, real fear, not the performed emotion he inflicts on slaves, but genuine primal terror. He activates the ship's internal defenses, automated staff cannons emerging from walls, targeting the intruder with mechanical precision. Fire. The throne room monitors show Ainz walking through the bombardment, like strolling through rain, barrier flickering with each impact, but never failing, never even slowing. Hebrew tries the environmental controls next, venting atmosphere from the corridors ahead. The skeleton doesn't breathe. He floods sections with radiation that should liquefy organic tissue. Ainz doesn't have organic tissue. Every trick, every fail-safe, every defense built into a ship designed to project godlike power across star systems useless, irrelevant. When Ainz reaches the throne room doors, they don't open. Hebrew's sealed them, reinforced naquadah, a foot thick, capable of withstanding direct hits from Mother Huntaks. Ainz places one bone hand flat against the surface and pushes, not hard, not violently, just persistent pressure, and you watch metal groan, warp, molecules reorganizing under forces that make mockery of material strength. The door peels open like paper. Hebrew rises from his throne, hand weapon drawn, and there's something pitiful about it. A false god finally confronting his own mortality, reduced to pointing a glorified pistol at inevitability. Walking through his door, he fires. Ainz catches the blast on that impossible barrier. He fires again. The weapon's charge depletes. Silence. Hebrew's hand trembles, and behind his golden mask,
You imagine his mind racing through calculations. Retreat. Call for reinforcements. The ring transporter. But Ainz is already speaking, and its voice fills the throne room with the weight of absolute certainty. You are afraid. Good. Fear is appropriate response to obsolescence. You have ruled this sector for 3 centuries. Hebrew, you have enslaved millions. Committed atrocities so numerous, your own records cannot catalog them all. And you believed yourself untouchable, because no force in this galaxy could challenge your fleet, your armies, your technology. The skeleton takes one step forward, just one, and Hebrew stumbles backward despite himself. You were incorrect. I am that force, and I am not unique. I am merely first. What happens next will be dissected in intelligence briefings for years, analyzed, debated, feared. Ainz extends its hand toward Hebrew, palm open, and speaks a word in a language that makes your ears ache. That feels wrong in your mouth just hearing it. Grasp heart. Hebrew's symbiote, the goad parasite that's inhabited his body for centuries, that grants him strength and extended life, convulses, not from outside force, from within. The creature writhes, trying to burrow deeper, trying to escape, but there's nowhere to go. You watch on the monitors as Hebrew collapses, clawing at his own neck, his own chest, as if he could physically extract the thing killing him from inside. His symbiote emerges from his throat, expelled by forces biological systems shouldn't survive, and drops to the floor twitching, dying. Hebrew's the host follows seconds later, 40-year-old man, suddenly experiencing the accumulated cellular damage of 3 centuries compressed into moments. He ages, skin slowing, hair whitening, eyes clouding. Within 30 seconds, there's just a corpse on the golden floor, ancient and desiccated, and a dead snake next to it. Stargate Command watches in absolute silence. No one speaks. No one can. Because what just happened wasn't combat, wasn't warfare. It was pest control. A system lord, a being who commanded fleets and armies, who shaped the politics of entire sectors, eliminated like an insect, with less effort than swatting a fly. Ainz Ooal stands alone in that throne room, surrounded by gold and riches and the trappings of false divinity, and when it speaks again, its words carry to every corner of the ship through means no one understands. All Jaffa aboard this vessel, all human slaves, hear me, your God is dead, not defeated in glorious battle, not martyred for a cause, simply removed, erased. You are now free to make choice. Serve me and live in stability. Resist and join him. Flee and carry this message to every gold in the galaxy. The age of false gods ends now. A new age begins, and it will be efficient. The transmission ends. On Earth, in Cheyenne Mountain, you stand in the control room and watch the Hartax systems go dark, not destroyed, commandeered. Every system, every control, every piece of ancient derived technology that the gold barely understand, all of it bowing to a will that reality itself seems unable to refuse. News spreads through the galaxy the way blood spreads through water, slowly at first, then everywhere at once. A Jaffa survivor from Hebrew's Hartak gates to Chulak, stumbling through with eyes wide and faith shattered. He speaks in broken fragments to the temple priests, describing the skeleton god, the effortless death, the way their master aged centuries in seconds. The priests beat him for blasphemy. Within hours, 3 more survivors arrive at different worlds with identical stories. Within a day, the whispers reach Apophis, reach Ooal, reach every system lord who thought themselves apex predators in an ordered galaxy. You monitor the communications intercepts from Cheyenne Mountain, watching intelligence officers translate increasingly frantic gold transmissions. Denial, accusations of Tok'ra manipulation, demands for proof. Then the proof arrives. Helmet cam footage from a fleeing Jaffa, showing skeletal hands and hearts stopping, and a god dying on his own throne. The denials stop. The galaxy holds its breath, and somewhere, in the cold void between stars, Ainz Ooal prepares for the next lesson. The Tok'ra receive the news with carefully controlled horror. In their underground base on Ravana, the High Council convenes in emergency session. Garshaw of Belot, their leader, watches the footage 3 times in succession. Her host trembles. Her symbiote, Tok'ra, not gold, opposed to everything the system lords represent, feels something it hasn't experienced in millennia. Uncertainty about whether salvation or apocalypse just entered their universe. Selmak speaks through Jacob Carter's mouth, addressing the assembled council with measured words that barely contain the panic underneath. This entity eliminated her brewer in under 15 minutes. No fleet engagement, no ground assault, no political maneuvering. Just removed him, like pulling a weed. Another council member, Persis, leans forward. The Tok'ra claim this being seeks to eliminate all system lords. If true, this aligns with our objectives. We should establish contact, offer intelligence, coordinate. Garshaw cuts him off with a raised hand. Coordinate, Gaved. Warshaw cuts him off with a raised hand. Coordinate, with what? We don't understand what this thing is. Magic, they call it. Magic, as if we've regressed to primitive superstition. No, we observe, we wait, and we prepare for the possibility that removing one tyrant simply makes room for a worse one. The Asgard response is more immediate and infinitely more concerning. On their homeworld, the High Council of the Asgard convenes via holographic interface. Thor, Earth's sometime protector, the supreme commander who's navigated the galaxy's political complexities for centuries, presents his analysis with characteristic precision. The data streams he's compiled paint a picture that defies their understanding. Dimensional incursion, physics violations, energy manipulation without detectable technology. An Asgard scientist, Freya, voices what they're all thinking. This entity operates outside the parameters of our science. It doesn't utilize ancient technology. It doesn't draw power from zero-point modules or stellar bodies. It simply commands, and reality obeys. Thor's hologram flickers as he delivers the assessment everyone dreads. We must consider the possibility that this Ainz Ooal represents a threat on par with the replicators, perhaps greater. The replicators seek resources and replication. This being seeks governance, control, and it possesses capabilities we cannot counter with existing defensive measures. The silence that follows carries weight. The Asgard have protected the galaxy for millennia. They've held back the gold, negotiated with the ancients, fought the replicators to a stalemate, and now something's arrived that makes them feel obsolete. Apophis learns of her brewer's death while torturing a minor system lord who'd failed to deliver tribute. The messenger bursts into the chamber, protocol forgotten, and the words spill out in a panic that would normally earn instant execution. But Apophis doesn't kill the messenger. He drops the torture device, dismisses his Jaffa guards, and sits alone in his throne room watching the footage on repeat.
His tactical mind, the quality that's kept him alive through centuries of gold politics, races through scenarios. Military response. Impossible to target what you can't track. Alliance. With whom? Against what? Every system lord fears betrayal more than external threats. Retreat. Hide in some forgotten corner of the galaxy and admit defeat to a single. Protests. Shouldn't they focus on the skeletal threat? Batal's smile is cold and calculating. This entity wants to remove system lords. Fine. We demonstrate we are not like the others. We are adaptable, reasonable. We make ourselves useful to the new paradigm rather than obstacles to it. It's pure Batal turning existential threat into political opportunity, betting that intelligence and flexibility will triumph over brute resistance. What he doesn't understand yet, what none of them understand, is that Ainz Ooal gown isn't building a new paradigm. It's erasing the old one completely, and no amount of cunning matters when the board itself is being flipped. On Earth, the politicians arrive. You watch them flood into Cheyenne Mountain. Joint Chiefs, NSA directors, cabinet members, the carefully selected few who know the Stargate program exists. They want explanations, strategies, assurances that this undead entity won't turn its attention to Earth once it's finished with the gold. General Hammond does his best, but there's no playbook for this. Colonel Carter presents her analysis, power levels that dwarf anything they've encountered, operational capabilities that suggest either highly advanced technology or something genuinely supernatural. Neither option is comforting. Daniel Jackson argues for diplomatic engagement, for trying to understand Ainz motivations before assuming hostile intent. O'Neill counters that any being who casually commits mass deicide probably isn't big on diplomacy. Teal sits silent through most of it, and when he finally speaks, his words stop the argument cold. My people have suffered under the gold for millennia. We have prayed for deliverance, for freedom, for gods who were not lies. Perhaps we should be careful what we pray for. Freedom bought with another's power is not freedom. It is simply better slavery. The debate rages for 6 hours. Options are proposed and discarded. Military intervention against what? Diplomatic outreach saying what? Passive observation, while Ainz reshapes galactic power structures. They're still arguing when the Stargate activates unscheduled. Ainz Ooal gown steps through, and the control room erupts in controlled chaos. The entity moves through security checkpoints, like they don't exist, walks directly to the briefing room where the Joint Chiefs are assembled, and speaks without preamble. I have returned Haru's Hardak to orbit above his former mining colony. The 5,000 human slaves have been freed. The Jaffa have been given choice: serve me or depart in peace. 243 chose service, 57 chose departure. I executed none. The mining operation continues, but quotas are reduced by 60%, and all laborers now receive compensation, shelter, and medical care. Efficiency increased 17%. This is the model. The room sits stunned. Ainz continues, that emotionless voice delivering utopian nightmare in perfect monotone. I will duplicate this process on every gold-controlled world, systematically, efficiently. I estimate full galactic transition within 18 standard months. I inform you as courtesy, not as request for approval. However, I am prepared to address concerns. You have 5 minutes. 5 minutes to question a god. 5 minutes to shape the future of the galaxy. You watch the Joint Chiefs exchange glances, career military officers who've navigated Cold War politics and covert operations suddenly thrust into metaphysical crisis. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Coldwell,
finds his voice first. What happens to the freed slaves? The Jaffa who lose their gods? You're talking about millions of people suddenly unmoored from the only structure they've known. The chaos alone. Ainz's skull tilts, acknowledging the concern. The valid observation. I will establish transitional governance structures. Local councils selected from freed populations, overseen by loyal subordinates until stability is achieved. Education programs for those who wish to understand their new circumstances. Protection from external threats during the integration period. I have experience managing large populations through paradigm shifts. It is not pleasant, but it is necessary. There's something almost sad in that last statement. Almost. But the crimson flames in those eye sockets burn cold and certain, and you realize this being has made these kinds of calculations before, has ruled before, has transformed societies before, and the fact that it finds no joy in the process makes it somehow more terrifying, not less. 3 weeks. That's how long it takes for the galaxy to understand this isn't an isolated incident. 3 weeks of Stargates activating on gold control, of skeletal figures appearing in throne rooms, of system lords dying in increasingly creative ways as Ainz experiments with the full breadth of its capabilities. Nirti falls to instant death magic while attempting to flee through a ring transport. Her body simply stops functioning mid-transport, molecules frozen between dimensions. Cronus survives the initial encounter by immediately surrendering, begging for his life with all the dignity of a drowning rat. Ainz accepts his surrender, strips him of his territories, and exiles him to a primitive world with nothing but the clothes on his back. Mercy, perhaps, or a message. Death is reserved for those who resist. Kali, the Hindu goddess-styled system, attempts negotiation, offers alliance, resources, anything to maintain some fragment of power. Ainz listens patiently to her proposal, then executes her anyway. You mistake pragmatism for weakness, it explains to her corpse. I accept surrender. I do not accept partnership with slavers. The message spreads faster than light. Bow completely, or cease completely. There is no middle ground. You stand on P8X412, a former gold agricultural world, watching the transition firsthand. SG-1 was dispatched to observe and report, to see what Ainz's governance actually looks like on the ground. What you find defies easy categorization. The Jaffa who served here, 200 strong, now wear simple clothes instead of armor, tend fields instead of guard posts. The human population, formerly slaves working 18-hour days, now operate on 8-hour shifts with rest periods, medical care, education for children. A skeletal figure you recognize as one of Ainz's subordinates, undead creatures he created from fallen Jaffa, who volunteered for transformation, oversees the operation with eerie efficiency. It speaks in that same flat tone. Caloric intake increased 40%. Infant mortality reduced 73%. Agricultural output stable despite reduced labor hours. Satisfaction surveys indicate 91% approval among former slaves, 68% among former Jaffa. Daniel Jackson asks the obvious question, and the other 32% of Jaffa. The undead administrator's skull rotates toward him. 17% require additional cultural adjustment time. 15% actively resist new paradigm. They are monitored, but not harmed unless they initiate violence. It's utopian, it's efficient, it's horrifying. Because you watch these people, freed slaves who should be celebrating liberation, and they're terrified, not of abuse, not of starvation, of the thing that saved them.
Children hide when the undead administrators patrol. Adults speak in hushed tones, glancing over shoulders at skeletal overseers who never sleep, never tire, never stop optimizing every aspect of existence. O'Neill voices what everyone's thinking. This is better than gold rule, objectively, by every metric. But it doesn't feel free. It feels. He trails off, searching for words. Teals finishes the thought. It feels like we are insects in a terrarium, well-fed, protected, observed. But the glass walls remain, and the being who maintains the terrarium is not one of us. Carter runs her scanner over the undead administrator, data streaming across her screen. This used to be a Jaffa warrior, Bratek's nephew, according to records. He volunteered for this transformation to serve Ainz. The process, it's not resurrection, it's complete reconstitution. The body remains, but the consciousness, I'm detecting neural activity, but it's fundamentally altered, enhanced, and subordinated to Ainz's will. She looks up, and there's existential horror in her eyes. This is how he governs, not through occupation or surveillance, through creating loyal servants who were once the governed themselves. The system lords who remain, perhaps 24 of the original hundreds, finally attempt organized resistance. Apophis brokers the unthinkable, an alliance. EAA. Sokar provides fleet assets. You the Great brings ancient tactical knowledge. They assemble on a fortified world with a Stargate buried 3 miles underground, protected by every defensive measure that combined technologies can muster. Force fields, automated defense systems, a fleet of 15 Hartex in orbit, 10,000 Jaffa elite warriors armed with every weapon they've accumulated across millennia. It's the largest military concentration in recorded gold history, not aimed at each other for once, but at a common enemy. Apophis stands before his reluctant allies, and his voice carries unaccustomed weight. This being eliminated, her rule in minutes, Nirti in seconds. It has claimed 72 worlds in 3 weeks without deploying a single fleet, without losing a single battle. We cannot defeat it through conventional warfare, but we can make victory so costly, so prolonged, that it seeks alternative solutions. We can make ourselves too expensive to remove. It's sound logic, reasonable strategy, and it's completely wrong. Ainz arrives not through the buried Stargate, but through reality itself. One moment, the war room is secure, system lords arguing over defensive formations. The next, a skeletal figure stands in the center of the chamber, having simply decided it was there and making it so. The Jaffa guards fire instantly, 50 staff weapons discharging in confined space, plasma bolts converging on the intruder. The barrier appears, that impossible wall between Ainz and consequence. But this time something's different. The barrier flickers under sustained fire, shows stress. Apophis sees it, the first genuine vulnerability they've witnessed, and presses the advantage. Concentrate fire, all weapons, all guards. It can be overwhelmed. More Jaffa pour in, more weapons discharge. The barrier holds but visibly wavers, and for one desperate moment, the system lords dare to hope. Then Ainz speaks a single word, in that language that hurts to hear, and the world stops, not metaphorically, actually stops. Every Jaffa frozen mid-motion, plasma bolts hanging in air, system lords paralyzed mid-breath. Time
It studies Apophis first. Skull inches from the system lord's terrified eyes. The only part of him still capable of movement, still capable of experiencing the horror of consciousness, trapped in frozen time. Ainz's voice echoes in the stillness, conversational despite the apocalypse it's demonstrating. Ninth tier magic. Time stop. Your scientists would struggle to comprehend it. Your technologies cannot replicate it. But observe, the skeletal hand extends, touches Apophis's forehead, and something flows between them. Information, memory, understanding. When time resumes 3 seconds later, Apophis collapses, gasping, and Ainz has already moved to Ball, to Sokar, to each system lord in turn, touching foreheads, transferring something that leaves them trembling. The Jaffa guards resume firing, but their hearts aren't in it anymore. They've seen their gods frozen, seen them made helpless as children. Some drop their weapons, others flee. The smart ones kneel. Ainz waits until the chaos settles, until only the system lords remain standing, and then it speaks with something approaching disappointment. I gave each of you complete understanding of what I am, full knowledge of my capabilities, my history, my nature. I removed the excuse of ignorance, and still you resist. Why? Baal answers, and to his credit, his voice remains steady, despite the terror radiating from every system lord in the room. Because even perfect slavery is slavery. Because some of us would rather die free than live as your subjects. It's defiance. Genuine, suicidal defiance. From a being who spent millennia crushing defiance in others. Ainz regards him for a long moment, and when it speaks, there's something new in that mechanical voice. Respect, an admirable sentiment. Misplaced, but admirable. Unfortunately, I cannot permit your continued existence. You have proven intelligent, adaptable, and uncompromising, qualities I value, but which make you permanent threats to stability. However, the skeletal hand gestures, and the kneeling Jaffa vanish, transported somewhere by forces nobody understands. I will grant you the death you prefer, not execution. Combat, you and your allies, armed as you wish, against me. No barriers, no time manipulation, pure martial conflict. If you prevail, I withdraw from this galaxy entirely. If you fall, your territories integrate peacefully, without further resistance. Do you accept these terms? The system lords exchange glances. It's a trap, obviously a trap, but it's also the only chance they have. Apophis nods once. We accept. The arena forms from nothing. Vast circular space carved from the fortress's heart. Walls reinforced with naquada to contain energy blasts. 15 system lords stand arrayed in practiced formation, each armed with hand weapons, personal shields, every advantage their technology provides. Above them, holographic feeds broadcast to every major Goa'uld stronghold still standing, to Tok'ra bases, to Stargate Command, to Asgard vessels monitoring from orbit. The galaxy watches. Ainz stands alone in the arena's center, robes pooling around skeletal feet, arms relaxed at its sides. No weapons, no visible preparation, just patient expectation. O'Neill's voice crackles through your earpiece from Earth. This is insane. It's giving them a fair fight. Why would it give them a fair fight? Carter responds, and she sounds like she's solved an equation she wishes she hadn't. Because it's not giving them a fair fight. It's proving that even without advantages, even in conditions favorable to them, the outcome is inevitable. It's not demonstrating power. It's demonstrating the futility of resistance. The countdown begins. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. And the last desperate stand of the Goa'uld Empire begins with fire and ends with silence, and teaches the galaxy a lesson it will never forget. Apophis fires first. 15 beams of concentrated energy converge on Ainz from practiced angles. crossfire designed to overwhelm any single-point defense. The System Lords have fought each other for millennia. They know how to kill. The beams strike true, and for one suspended moment, you see Ainz stagger, actually stagger. The skeletal form rocks backward, robes smoking where energy pierced through, and across the galaxy watching feeds erupt in shocked hope. It can be hurt. It can be damaged. The System Lords press forward. Coordinated assault decades of mutual warfare never achieved. BAA Shield flanks left while Sokar flanks right. U activates a technology older than most civilizations, an ancient weapon that disrupts molecular bonds. Kali, somehow still alive in this timeline, her death delayed, unleashes nanotech swarms that consume matter at atomic level. Every weapon, every strategy, every desperate trick accumulated across eons of divine tyranny, deployed in 30 seconds of perfect synchronization. And Ainz stands in the center of it all, taking damage, absorbing punishment, and you realize with creeping horror that it's letting them, testing their capabilities, learning their limits, seeing what they're capable of when truly desperate. Then the skeletal hand rises, and the world turns inside out. Perfect warrior. The words echo with power that makes your bones vibrate even through the video feed. Ainz's form shifts, not gradually, but instantly, reality rewriting what the entity is. The skeletal frame fills with spectral muscle phantom armor, manifesting from nothing. A massive weapon appearing in hands that were empty. A heartbeat ago, the transformation completes in less than a second. And what stands where Ainz's old gown stood is something different. Something that makes the System Lords freeze mid-assault, weapons lowering in unconscious recognition. A warrior, pure, absolute. The kind of combatant that existed before gods, before technology, before civilization softened warfare into politics. Apophis tries to rally his allies, screams orders to maintain formation, to concentrate fire, but his voice cracks with the despair of someone watching their worst nightmare manifest in real time. Because Ainz isn't just defending anymore, Ainz is advancing. And the 15 System Lords, false gods who've conquered galaxies, begin to understand what real combat looks like. The first to fall is Cronus. Ironic, given he'd already surrendered once before, been exiled, and somehow found his way back to this final stand. Ainz closes the distance between them, in a blur of motion that shouldn't be possible for something that size. Weapon swinging in an arc that physics says should be slower. The personal shield Cronus relies on, technology that stopped armor-piercing rounds and energy weapons, shatters like glass. The blade continues through without slowing, and Cronus separates into pieces too numerous to count, each segment hitting the arena floor with wet finality. No time for lost words. No dramatic confrontation, just efficient butchery executed with mathematical precision. Sokar attempts to capitalize on the opening, firing point blank into Ainz's exposed back. The shot connects, passes through, and you realize the entity is no longer entirely physical, phasing between states, solid enough to cut, but ephemeral enough to avoid damage it doesn't wish to receive. Sokar realizes it too, in his final second, before Ainz pivots and drives an armored fist through his chest cavity, pulling out the gold symbiote still writhing around the host's spine. BAAA all proves why he's considered the most dangerous System Lord. While others attack directly, he's been calculating, observing, analyzing patterns in Ainz's movements. He identifies a tell,
fractional delay between phasing states, a window measured in microseconds, where the entity must be solid to interact with matter. Ooal fires not where Ainz is, but where he must be in 0.03 seconds, compensating for light speed delay and phase transition. The shot connects perfectly, strikes Ainz's skull dead center, cracks form, spreading like spider webs across bone, and Ooal allows himself one moment of triumph. Then the cracks seal, regenerate, bone reknitting faster than the damage propagates, and Ainz's skull rotates toward Ooal with something that might be approval in those crimson flames. Excellent deduction, flawless execution. Under other circumstances, I would have recruited you. The entity's weapon dematerializes, and its hands begin moving in complex patterns, trailing light like burning after images. Unfortunately, you remain bold, and I made a promise to this galaxy. The spell completes, fallen down, and Ooal learns what it means to be unmade by holy fire that cares nothing for personal shields or sarcophagus resurrection, or the arrogance of false divinity. You watch through, fingers pressed against your eyes, unable to look away despite desperately wanting to.
This isn't battle. It's not even massacre. It's demonstration. Educational content delivered in blood and terror to every being watching across the galaxy. Each system lord falls differently. You frozen in temporal stasis before shattering like crystal. Kali consumed by the same nanotech swarms she'd deployed. Apophis granted his desired warrior's death in single combat that lasts 3 sword strokes. Ainz varies the methods deliberately, showcasing the breadth of capabilities it possesses. Magic that ignores shields, martial prowess that exceeds genetically enhanced warriors, tactical awareness that anticipates every desperate gambit before it's executed. The message is clear. There is no avenue of resistance that leads to success. Technology fails, strategy fails, courage and desperation and fighting spirit, all meaningless before sufficient power differential. Within 8 minutes of combat start, the arena floor is silent. 15 corpses in various states of destruction, and Ainz Ooal gown standing in the center, warrior form dissipating back to skeletal robes without a scratch remaining on its frame. The feeds continue broadcasting. Nobody cuts transmission. The galaxy needs to see this, needs to understand what just happened. In Tokrabate, we should celebrate or mourn. O'Neill stares at the screen, at the skeletal figure, calmly cleaning gore from its robes with a gesture that makes the mess simply cease to exist. Maybe both. Maybe that's the point. Ainz turns toward the cameras, toward the galaxy watching, and speaks directly to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Its voice carries through every feed simultaneously, translated into every language by means nobody understands, ensuring universal comprehension. The Goad Empire ends today. System lords who remain, Nearity, Morrigan, Lord Yu's descendants, any I have not personally addressed, you have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Present yourselves to the nearest world under my governance. You will be judged individually based on your actions, your crimes, your willingness to transition. Some may be granted exile, others face execution, but your reign ends now, without negotiation. The entity pauses, and those crimson flames sweep across camera angles, as if making eye contact with every watching being simultaneously. To the Jaffa, you are no longer slaves. Your symbiotes will be replaced with medical technology that grants equivalent life extension without servitude. Choose freedom. To the enslaved humans, governance councils are being established on your worlds. You will select your leaders. I will provide stability until you can maintain it yourselves. This is not conquest. This is reorganization, and it is inevitable. The transmission ends. Silence falls across the galaxy. Then the responses begin. Jaffa rebellions erupt on 100 worlds as warriors who thought themselves bound realize the gods are dead and there's nothing left to serve. Human slaves take their first hesitant steps towards self-governance, organized by those skeletal administrators who never sleep and optimize everything they touch. The remaining system lords, perhaps a dozen still alive, hiding in forgotten corners of space, face impossible choices, surrender and face judgment, flee to unmapped regions and hope Ainz forgets them, or make final stands that everyone knows will end in death. Within hours, 6 more surrender. 3 vanish into deep space. The last 3 choose defiance, and Ainz methodically hunts them down over the following week, eliminating each with the same clinical efficiency demonstrated in the arena. And Earth, humanity's cradle, sits in its little blue marble and watches the galaxy transform around it, wondering if they've witnessed liberation, or simply the replacement of one absolute power with another. General Hammond summarizes it best in his final report to the President. The Goa'uld are finished. The question we must now answer is whether we've gained an ally or simply exchanged one master for another, and whether in the final analysis that distinction actually matters. Thor arrives on Earth 3 days after the last system lord falls. No advance warning, no diplomatic protocols. The Asgard simply beams directly into the briefing room where SG-1 is analyzing intelligence reports, his small gray form materializing with that familiar shimmer. But there's something different this time. Thor's large black eyes, usually carrying benevolent wisdom, reflect something you've never seen in an Asgard before. Fear, not panic, not terror. The calculated fear of a scientist who's just realized the experiment is outside control parameters and accelerating toward unknown outcomes. He doesn't greet them, doesn't acknowledge O'Neill's surprised welcome, just activates his holographic interface and displays data that makes Carter's eyes widen in scientific horror. In the 72 hours since Ainz Gaun eliminated the Goa'uld leadership, we have detected anomalies in subspace across 47 sectors. Dimensional boundaries are thinning. The barrier between this reality and adjacent ones shows stress fractures we cannot explain. Thor's synthesized voice remains calm, but his hands tremble as he manipulates the data. This entity is not merely powerful, it is fundamentally incompatible with our universe's physics. Its presence is causing cascade failures in the underlying fabric of space-time. The briefing room becomes a war room. Carter cross-references Thor's data with her own sensor readings, and the picture that emerges is cosmological nightmare rendered in mathematics. Every world Ainz has visited shows residual dimensional distortion. Every spell it's cast leaves scars in subspace that don't heal. The entity operates on principles so alien to this universe that reality itself struggles to process its existence, like a computer trying to run software written in a programming language it doesn't recognize. The universe is adapting, compensating, but the strain is cumulative. Daniel Jackson voices the question everyone's thinking. What happens when the strain becomes too much? When reality can't compensate anymore? Thor's response is delivered with clinical precision that makes it somehow worse. Theoretical models suggest localized spatial collapse.
regions where physics becomes inconsistent, zones where matter and energy behave unpredictably. In extreme scenarios, complete dimensional fragmentation, the Milky Way could become uninhabitable, not through conquest but through environmental catastrophe caused by Ainz's mere presence. Wurji-way, 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 Yerinda, Wurji-way, Wurji-way. Teal'c leans forward, jaw set. Then we must convince it to leave, to return to wherever it came from before. Thor interrupts, something he never does. It cannot. We analyzed the dimensional fracture that brought it here. The damage is permanent. Ainz Wurji-way Ain is trapped in our universe, and our universe is slowly being poisoned by its existence. You stand in the control room, watching the gate activate as Thor departs to brief the Asgard High Council, and you think about cosmic irony. The galaxy finally freed from the goad, millions of slaves liberated, a tyrant who actually delivers on promises of stability and governance, and it might kill them all anyway, not through malice, but through incompatibility with the fundamental laws of existence. O'Neill slumps in his chair, and his sardonic mask slips for just a moment. So we traded snake gods, who tortured us, for a skeleton god, who's nice but accidentally tears holes in space just by existing. Great, fantastic. Someone remind me why we didn't just leave the Stargate buried. It's not funny. Nobody laughs. But the gallows humor keeps the existential dread at bay for another few seconds. Carter's already working equations, trying to find solutions, ways to shield the dimensional boundaries, methods to isolate the contamination. But you can see in her expression that she's fighting mathematics itself, and mathematics is winning. Hammond enters, face grim, carrying classified folders. The president wants options. The Joint Chiefs want contingencies. I want someone to tell me we're not watching the galaxy's slowest apocalypse. The silence that answers tells him everything. But in the cold void between galaxies, something else stirs. Ancient senses millennia dormant, left by a civilization that ascended beyond physical form, activate in response to the dimensional distortions. Automated monitoring systems register anomalies, then forward data to repositories hidden across 12 galaxies, and in one specific repository, on a world whose name has been forgotten by every living being, something receives the alert and begins to wake. Not quickly, not dramatically, with the slow inevitability of continental drift. Consciousness older than most stars surfaces from hibernation. The ancients built fail-safes, installed contingencies for scenarios their evolved minds could barely conceive, and one of those contingencies was triggered the moment Ainz Wurji-way tore through dimensional barriers and refused to die when the universe said death was required. The waking process will take weeks, perhaps months, but when it completes, the galaxy will learn that the Goa'uld were never the apex threat. They were merely the most recent inconvenience, and something infinitely older is about to remember why it left guardians behind. When it ascended to higher planes of existence, Ainz Wurji-way sits in what was upper Upperfiss's throne room, now repurposed as an administrative center. Holographic displays show governance reports from 217 worlds, production statistics, satisfaction surveys, conflict resolutions, infrastructure projects. The entity processes data with the efficiency of a supercomputer, making decisions that affect billions of lives, and feels nothing. Not satisfaction, not pride, not even the hollow sense of purpose it had in its previous existence. Just empty competence. The skeletal fingers manipulate interfaces, rerouting resources, approving council proposals, rejecting inefficient strategies. Behind it stands a figure that wasn't there before, an undead creature more sophisticated than the others, wearing armor that suggests tactical importance. It speaks in that same flat tone all of Ainz's creations share. Master, dimensional analysis complete. The Asgard are correct. Our presence destabilizes local space-time. Current projections suggest cumulative damage will reach critical thresholds within 2.3 standard years. Ainz doesn't turn, doesn't react, just continues processing governance reports for another 17 seconds before responding. Acknowledged. Begin research into stabilization techniques. Divert 10% of available computational resources to the problem. Priority level 4. Priority level 4. Not urgent, not critical. Just another problem to be solved alongside agricultural quotas and infrastructure planning. The undead lieutenant executes the command without question, and you watch through intelligence feeds that Tok'ra spies manage to install in the throne room. Watching this scene with mounting horror, because Ainz knows it's destroying the fabric of reality, knows every day it exists, brings the universe closer to collapse.
On Earth, emergency meetings convene at levels far above Stargate Command's usual authority. The President, the Joint Chiefs, the heads of every intelligence agency, they need solutions, and they need them before the Asgard decide Earth's new ally represents an extinction-level threat requiring elimination. The debate runs in circles, diplomatic outreach to Ainz, requesting it voluntarily, cease all magical activity, military options. Nobody actually believes would work, evacuation plans for a galaxy. Nobody knows how to evacuate, appeals to higher powers that may or may not still exist. Daniel Jackson proposes the unthinkable. What if we contacted the ancients, the real ascended ancients, not the Ori? If anyone has the knowledge and power to address dimensional stability, it's them. The room falls silent, because the ancients famously don't interfere, don't involve themselves in the affairs of lower planes. Their entire philosophy centers on non-intervention, evolved beings watching lesser civilizations struggle without offering help. But Hammond nods slowly. Do we have any other options? The Asgard are stumped. Ainz either can't or won't fix the problem. And where he pauses, searching for adequate words, we're talking about the structural integrity of reality itself. If there was ever a time for ascended beings to bend their rules, this is it. The contact attempt begins through the only channel available. Oma Desala, the ascended ancient, who's helped SG-1 before, who's shown willingness to bend non-interference rules when existence itself hangs in the balance. Daniel enters the meditation chamber they've prepared, attempting to reach higher planes through techniques she taught him, calling out to beings who exist beyond normal space-time. Hours pass, then days. You begin to think it's not working, that the ascended ancients have decided this problem isn't worth their attention, that the lower planes must solve their own crises, even when those crises involve dimensional collapse. But on the fourth day, something answers. Not Oma, something else. Older, colder, a presence that fills the chamber without occupying space, that speaks without sound, that makes reality feel thin and translucent and temporary. It doesn't identify itself, doesn't offer greeting or comfort, just delivers a message in words that echo in bones and blood rather than ears. The anomaly is acknowledged, the contamination is calculated, intervention scenarios are being evaluated. You will be informed of decisions when decisions are made. Do not attempt further contact. Higher matters are in motion. Remain optimally positioned for integration or evacuation as circumstances develop. The presence withdraws, and Daniel collapses, gasping, bleeding from his nose, eyes wide with existential terror, because he touched something ascended, and it regarded him, regarded all of them, as variables in an equation being solved, not people, not even allies. Just factors to be optimized around when higher powers make whatever move they're planning. And the message is clear. Something vast and ancient is waking up, and when it fully rouses, the galaxy will learn what happens when titans clash across dimensions that reality was never meant to support. The Ancient appears on a dead world in a forgotten system 6 weeks after Daniel's contact attempt. Not through Stargate, not through Ascension, through something older, a restoration of physical form from pure energy, consciousness compressing itself back into matter with forces that make local space scream in protest. The entity that manifests stands 8 feet tall, humanoid, but wrong, skin translucent enough to see light pulsing through veins that carry something other than blood. Its eyes hold galaxies, literal galaxies. You can see them rotating in those pupils, miniature spirals of stars compressed into organs designed to perceive dimensions humans can't imagine. When it speaks, the words arrive in your mind before sound reaches your ears, causality reversed by something that exists partially outside time. I am Astrius, last of the physical Lantian contingency guardians. I have been dormant for 10 million years, awakened by threat assessment protocols that detect existential contamination. The entity's gaze sweeps across empty landscape, seeing through matter to the dimensional scars Ainz left 3 weeks prior. The anomaly designation, Ainz opal gown, must be contained, neutralized, or expelled. This reality cannot sustain its presence. Thor receives the transmission first, Asgard sensors detecting power signatures that dwarf anything in their databases. The Ancient makes no attempt at stealth, broadcasting its presence across subspace like a declaration of war. Within hours, every major power knows an Ancient, unascended but wielding capabilities that blur the line between physical and energetic existence, has manifested with singular purpose. On Earth, the briefing room fills with familiar faces marked by unfamiliar dread. Carter presents sensor readings that make no sense. Energy output exceeding stars. Spatial manipulation on scales normally restricted to black holes, and underlying everything, a signature that resonates with ancient technology scattered across the galaxy. This being is what the Ancients were before they ascended, before they abandoned the physical plane for higher existence. And it's awake, and it's angry. O'Neill breaks the tension with characteristic bluntness. So we've got skeleton wizard tearing reality apart just by existing, and now we've got ancient super being whose job is apparently to clean up dimensional messes. This is leading somewhere good, right? Someone tell me this is leading somewhere good. Nobody tells him it's leading somewhere good, because they're all thinking the same thing. When powers this vast collide, bystanders don't survive. They get optimized out of existence. Ainz receives notification of Astrius's manifestation through its undead intelligence network. The skeletal ruler sits motionless in the administrative throne room, processing implications with computational efficiency that leaves no room for emotion. After 17 seconds of calculation, it speaks to the empty air, knowing that somehow the Ancient will hear. Astrius of the Lantians,
Your concern regarding dimensional stability is acknowledged and valid. However, I cannot cease to exist simply because my existence is inconvenient. I propose dialogue. I possess knowledge of dimensional mechanics from my original universe. Perhaps collaborative research yields stabilization solutions superior to confrontation. The message transmits across frequencies. Ancient technology recognizes carried on subspace channels that shouldn't exist but do because Ainz has learned to manipulate this universe's physics like a musician learning a new instrument. For 3 minutes, silence, then reality splits, and Astrius stands in the throne room, having simply decided to be there and making space-time accommodate the decision. The two entities regard each other, skeleton draped in robes darker than void, and translucent humanoid pulsing with ancient power, and the galaxy holds its breath. You watch through hidden sensors, through intelligence feeds that Tok'ra agents maintain at great risk, as these beings conduct a conversation that human minds struggle to process. They don't speak sequentially. Concepts transfer between them in compressed data bursts that contain hours of meaning in seconds of exchange. You catch fragments, mathematical frameworks describing dimensional topology, theoretical models of cross-universal contamination, proposed solutions ranging from voluntary departure to forced containment to collaborative existence. The Ancient's position crystallizes first. Your presence is terminal contamination. Every action you take deepens the wound. Even standing still, you bleed entropy into our reality's foundations. The solution is binary. You leave, or you are unmade. I am equipped to enforce either outcome. Ainz's response carries no defensiveness, just clinical analysis. I cannot leave. The dimensional barrier that brought me here collapsed behind me. Unmaking me requires overcoming defensive capabilities you have not adequately assessed, and even if successful, my dissolution may cause greater dimensional rupture than my continued existence. You acknowledge this possibility in your own probability matrices. I detect the uncertainty. The Ancient pauses, and in that pause, you see something remarkable. Calculation, doubt. This being that awakened with absolute certainty in its purpose, confronting an anomaly that refuses to fit the expected parameters. Astrius's form flickers, galaxies in its eyes spinning faster, processing scenarios at speeds that make quantum computers look like abacuses. When it speaks again, the certainty has fractured. Clarification required. You claim defensive capabilities sufficient to resist ancient-level intervention. Evidence. Ainz's skeletal hand rises, and reality around it shivers. Not dramatically, not violently, just a subtle wrongness, as if the universe briefly forgot how to be itself in that specific location. I am undead, not living, not dead. Existing in conceptual space between states, your weapons target living matter or energy constructs. I am neither. Your dimensional manipulation operates on this reality's physics. I operate on imported frameworks. Your universe struggles to process. We are mutually incompatible, Astrius, which means direct conflict produces unpredictable cascade failures in local space-time, precisely the outcome you seek to prevent. The logic is inescapable, and you watch the Ancient process it with something approaching horror, because Ainz is right. Fighting it might cause exactly the catastrophe Astrius awakened to prevent. The standoff extends across hours. Two beings capable of reshaping reality, locked in cold calculation rather than hot warfare, each recognizing the other as peer rather than problem to be Astrius proposes an alternative: containment, not destruction, not exile. I construct dimensional isolation field around your operational space. You govern your conquered territories. I ensure your contamination doesn't spread beyond defined boundaries. We coexist in separate phases of the same space-time, intersecting but not mixing, stable, sustainable, suboptimal but functional. Ainz considers this for 3 full minutes, an eternity for an intelligence that processes at digital speeds, then nods slow and deliberate, acceptable with conditions. First, I retain full authority.
Installed membranes. Ozan watches the process with what might be professional admiration, offering technical corrections when the Ancient's framework interacts poorly with regions where Ozan's magic has already scarred reality. They work together, these incompatible powers, building a prison that's also a protection, a containment that's also a compromise. And watching it happen from Earth, you realize something profound and terrifying. The galaxy just got partitioned. There's now an Ozan 217 worlds under undead administration, cut off from the broader universe by ancient technology, stable and efficient and eternally governed by a being that can't die and won't stop optimizing. And there's the free zone, the rest of the galaxy, protected from dimensional contamination, but also isolated from the strange utopian nightmare. Ozan built from gold ashes on Earth. The reaction split along predictable lines. Military leadership breathes relief. The threat is contained. The crisis averted. Earth explicitly protected by ancient guarantee. Scientists despair. An entire region of space locked away. Technologies and knowledge potentially lost. The Stargate network partially severed. Daniel Jackson sits in the briefing room, head in hands, processing the philosophical implications. We just watched the galaxy get divided into the part that's free but unstable, and the part that's stable but ruled by an undead god administrator. And the worst part, I'm not sure which side is better off. Telchi places a hand on his shoulder, and when he speaks, there's weight in those words drawn from centuries of experience. Freedom without safety is chaos. Safety without freedom is prison. Your people have an expression: pick your poison. The galaxy has picked. Now we must learn to live with the choice we could not prevent. Outside, stars shine with indifferent beauty, ignorant of the invisible line that now divides them. And somewhere in the contained zone, Ooal Gown returns to administrative duties, processing governance reports with the same mechanical efficiency, aware that it won, not through combat, not through domination, but through being too dangerous to fight and too useful to destroy. The victory tastes of nothing, but then it never expected otherwise. 6 months after the partition, you stand on P2X887, a border world that exists in the strange liminal space between zones, technically outside Ainz's containment, but close enough to feel the pressure of that invisible barrier pressing against reality. The Stargate here connects to both sides, one of 12 gates that Astrius permitted as controlled access points, and you're watching something that shouldn't be possible. Refugees, not fleeing from Ainz's territory, fleeing toward it. Families carrying everything they own. Former slaves from outer rim worlds where the Goa'uld collapse created power vacuums that warlords and pirates filled faster than local governments could organize. They queue in orderly lines, processed by skeletal administrators who assess skills, assign housing, explain the rules in emotionless voices that somehow convey more patience than any human bureaucrat you've ever encountered. A woman holds her daughter close, fear and hope warring in her expression, and when the undead official informs her, she's been assigned quarters in Agricultural Sector 7, with guaranteed food, medical care, and education for her child, she weeps. Relief, gratitude, terror, all simultaneously, because salvation came wearing a skull, and she can't decide if she should thank it or run from it. Carter monitors the refugee flow from a mobile command post, sensor equipment tracking dimensional stability, ensuring the partition holds. Her reports paint a picture that makes politicians and generals uncomfortable. Ainz's zone is growing, not through conquest, through immigration. Every week, hundreds more risk the crossing, choosing undead administration over the chaos of sudden freedom without infrastructure to support it. The free galaxy, humanity's supposed victory, struggles with reality. The Jaffa no longer serve false gods, but many lack purpose without that structure. Worlds freed from Goa'uld rule descend into civil wars over resources and leadership. The Tok'ra try to help, spreading their people thin across dozens of crisis zones, but they're physicians treating symptoms of a disease called sudden liberation without transition. Meanwhile, beyond the barrier, Ainz's territories report 93% stability, 17% yearly growth in agricultural output, infant mortality approaching zero. The numbers are undeniable. The moral implications are unbearable. O'Neill summarizes it during a particularly tense briefing. So freedom is messy and people are dying, while robot god dictatorship is clean and people are thriving. Anyone else feel like the universe is mocking us? Inside the containment zone, you visit through one of the authorized gates, embedded with SG-1 on a diplomatic mission that feels more like anthropological expedition. The world you gate to, formerly Hera's prize mining colony, is unrecognizable from intelligence photos taken just months ago. The slave pens are gone, replaced by residential complexes that wouldn't look out of place on Earth. The mines still operate, but with 8-hour shifts, safety equipment, and wages paid in credits that purchase goods from automated distribution centers. Children attend schools where undead teachers explain mathematics and history in flat, emotionless voices, but with infinite patience, never tiring, never favoring, never missing when students struggle. It's dystopian utopia, and watching it function makes your skin crawl even as your rational mind acknowledges it's objectively better than anything the Goa'uld ever provided. You interview a former Jaffa warrior named Korak, now working as a civil engineer. He speaks carefully, glancing occasionally towards skeletal supervisors. Life is adequate, good, even. We eat, we rest, we build. But he pauses, searching for words. We are not Jaffa anymore. Not warriors, not even truly free. We are maintained, like equipment kept in optimal condition. And Lord Ainz, he stops himself, shakes his head. I do not complain. Complaint is inefficient. I serve the new order. It is better than the old. Daniel Jackson conducts interviews across a dozen worlds, compiling testimonies for some future history that might make sense of what's happened. He speaks with freed slaves who praise Ainz's governance, with Jaffa who quietly mourn the loss of purpose, with local council members who exercise theoretical authority under undead oversight. A pattern emerges: universal stability, universal healthcare, universal education, and universal surveillance. Not through cameras or monitoring devices, through the administrators themselves, the undead servants who are everywhere, who never sleep, who report patterns and anomalies back to central authority with missions.
efficiency. Privacy exists in name. In practice, deviance from optimal behavior patterns gets flagged for adjustment counseling. Sessions where skeletal psychologists explain more efficient life choices with the same patience they'd use explaining mathematics to children. Nobody's forced, nobody's punished, but the pressure toward conformity, toward optimal behavior, is constant and invisible, and utterly inescapable. Daniel's report concludes with a question he can't answer. Is this freedom with surveillance, or is it slavery with better conditions? And does the distinction matter to people who finally have enough food to feed their children? The free galaxy, meanwhile, struggles with its own demons. Burtak leads Jaffa reconstruction efforts, trying to forge new identity for warriors who've known only servitude to false gods. Some worlds succeed, establish democracies, build trade networks, create futures that justify the sacrifices made. But for every success, 3 failures. Warlords seize power on worlds where infrastructure collapsed. Famine strikes planets whose agricultural systems depended on Goa'uld technology. Nobody knows how to maintain. The Tok'ra provide aid, but they're finite beings, with limited resources trying to stabilize hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The Asgard offer technological assistance, but carefully, afraid of creating new dependencies, new systems people don't understand. And Earth sends SG teams to help where they can, knowing its drops in oceans, knowing they're watching freedom turn out to be more complex and painful than anyone predicted. You accompany one such mission to P9G 844, arriving to find bodies in the streets. Civil war between factions arguing over how to structure their new government. The irony is acid in your throat. These people died fighting for the freedom to choose their leaders. If they'd stayed under Ainz's administration, they'd be alive, fed, educated, and thoroughly optimized. Freedom costs. It costs blood and chaos, and the horrible uncertainty of building something from rubble without clear blueprints. The border worlds become crucibles of philosophical debate. Every cantina, every market, every public square features arguments about the partition. Pro-Ainz faction points to stability, to children attending school instead of starving, to medical care that functions. Anti-Ainz faction argues that comfort without choice is just attractive prison, that efficiency without autonomy is slavery regardless of living conditions. The debates grow heated, sometimes violent. You witness a former slave strike at Jaffa who suggests Ainz's governance was preferable to Goa'uld rule. My son died under the false gods, the man shouts, tears streaming, but he died free in his heart. Under the silent god, he'd live, but he'd never be free, never be himself. Just another optimized component in a perfect machine. The Jaffa responds quietly. My daughter learns to read in Ainz's schools. Under the Goa'uld, she would have been worked to death by age 50. I will take comfortable survival over free death. Call me coward if you wish, but my daughter lives. Neither is wrong. Both are right, and the galaxy is learning that some choices don't have good options, only less terrible ones. Stargate Command receives monthly reports from both zones. The data tells uncomfortable stories. Ainz's territory, 0 famine, 0.03% violent crime rate, universal literacy approaching 50%.
We made the right choice, keeping Earth outside the containment. We're free, we're struggling, and every night, I wonder if our children would be better off in a stable dictatorship or an unstable democracy. There's no good answer, Teal'c. Just the answer we have to live with. Teal'c. just the answer we have to live with. At the partition barrier itself, detectable only by ancient sensors and the subtle wrongness space exhibits at the boundary, something unexpected develops. Trade, not official, not sanctioned, but refugees flow one direction and goods flow the other. Ainz territory produces surplus, food, medicine, basic goods manufactured with ruthless efficiency. The free galaxy has what Ainz test zone lacks: innovation, art, chaos that breeds creativity, the unpredictable spark that comes from minds not optimized towards single purposes. Black markets emerge where the zones touch, merchants trading agricultural surplus for music, for stories, for anything that breaks the monotonous perfection of administered life. The undead officials observe, report, and Ainz, reviewing these reports in its administrative throne, makes a decision that surprises everyone. It permits the trade. Issues statement through official channels that goods may be exchanged at designated crossing points, that exposure to external culture is acceptable within parameters, that efficiency need not mean complete isolation. It's a crack, small, carefully managed, but a crack nonetheless in the perfect machine. And watching it happen, you wonder if Ainz Ooal is learning something, or if it's simply calculated that total isolation breeds instability more efficiently than controlled exposure. With this entity, you can never tell if its actions stem from compassion or optimization. Perhaps for Ainz, there's no difference anymore. 2 years after the partition, you stand in Chine Mountain's observation deck, watching stars through reinforced windows, knowing that beyond that glass lies a galaxy fundamentally changed. The gold are memory now, cautionary tales. Parents tell children, historical footnotes in databases that catalog empires that rose and fell. But what replaced them defies easy categorization. There's no war, no great conflicts. Just two fundamentally different approaches to existence, separated by a barrier that will probably outlast human civilization. Thor visits monthly, updating Earth on dimensional stability. The contamination has stopped spreading. Astraeus's containment holds. The universe is no longer tearing itself apart at the seams. But the Asgard scientist looks older somehow, despite their cloned bodies not aging. Wariness in those large black eyes, the exhaustion of a species that's watched galaxy after galaxy embrace solutions they find philosophically troubling. Your species stands at the crossroads, Thor tells Hammond during one such visit. You may enter Ainz test containment voluntarily, many worlds have, or remain free with all the chaos and beauty that freedom entails. There is no wrong answer, only consequences you must accept. The debate consumes Earth for months. Town halls, congressional sessions, United Nations assemblies that stretch across days. The pro-containment faction presents compelling data. Earth's poverty could be eliminated, diseases cured, education universally accessible. The anti-containment faction argues that humanity didn't fight the gold, didn't build the Stargate program, didn't sacrifice thousands of soldiers just to voluntarily surrender autonomy to a benevolent dictator. Both sides marshal evidence. Both sides make emotional appeals. And watching it unfold, you realize this is exactly the choice Ainz's arrival forced on the entire galaxy: comfort versus freedom, stability versus self-determination, the efficient answer versus the human one. The vote, when it finally comes, is closer than anyone expected. 52% choose to remain free. 48% would have welcomed the Silent God's administration. The margin is razor thin, and it reveals something profound about humanity. You're not unified in your values, not certain in your convictions, split almost perfectly between those who prize freedom above all and those who would trade it for security. President Hayes signs the Declaration of Independence, ironic phrasing, declaring independence from something you were never formally part of, but the symbolism matters. Earth remains outside. For now, inside the containment zone. Ainz continues its eternal optimization. You receive intelligence reports from Tok'ra agents who maintain presence in both zones, and the picture they paint is one of quiet transformation. The undead administrators are slowly being replaced, not eliminated, but supplemented by living beings trained in Ainz's methodologies, former slaves and Jaffa who've internalized the principles of efficient governance. It's succession planning, gradual transfer of administrative function from undead servants to mortal bureaucrats who understand the system and can maintain it. Ainz is teaching, building infrastructure not just physical but organizational, creating governance that could theoretically function without its direct oversight. When Carter reviews this intelligence, she poses a question nobody wants to contemplate. What if Ainz is preparing to leave? Not die, it can't die, but withdraw. Let the system it built maintain itself while it, What does an undead god king do when its work is finished? Nobody has answers. The concept of Ainz as temporary administrator, rather than eternal ruler, contradicts everything they've assumed about the entity's nature and goals. On a border world, you witness something that will haunt you for years. A school, not inside the containment zone, just outside it, in the free galaxy, but structured exactly like Ainz's educational facilities. 8-hour days. Universal curriculum, systematic skill assessment. The teachers are human, but they've been trained by visiting undead instructors during the brief period before the partition solidified. They teach with the same methodical patience, the same optimization toward measurable outcomes. The students learn faster, retain more, graduate with practical skills that serve them well in rebuilding society. It's effective, it's disturbing, because Ainz's methods work even without Ainz. The system propagates itself, spreads through cultural contact and pragmatic adoption, and you're watching the free galaxy voluntarily incorporate pieces of the machine they claim to reject. Daniel observes this, and his voice carries the weight of someone witnessing the future arrive ahead of schedule. We didn't beat the silent god. We didn't even contain it. We just drew a line and said not here, not yet. But the ideas, the systems, they don't respect boundaries. They spread because they work. And in 100 years, I'm not sure anyone will remember there was ever a choice. The Jaffa nation, Teal'c's grand dream, finally stabilizes after 2 years of brutal growing pains. They've built something unprecedented. A democratic warrior culture that values strength and honor alongside debate and compromise. It's messy, it's inefficient, it's frequently frustrating. It's also genuinely theirs, in a way nothing under gold or Ainz could have been. Bratak, ancient beyond counting, addresses the first elected council of Free Jaffa, and his words carry wisdom, earned through centuries of false service and real liberation. We have paid for our freedom in blood, in chaos, in suffering we could have avoided by accepting the silent God's rule. Some call us fools. They may be correct, but we are free fools. We stumble forward on our own feet rather than march efficiently in another's chains. This is the burden we chose. This is the gift we earned. Do not forget its cost. Do not take it lightly, and do not believe the work is finished. Freedom must be maintained, generation after generation, or it dissolves back into the comfortable slavery we escaped.
The council rises as one, warriors acknowledging truth from their elder. And across the galaxy, similar scenes play out on dozens of worlds, imperfect systems built from scratch, failing and rebuilding, learning through pain what Ainz's subjects will never need to learn. Ainz Ooal sits alone in what was once Apophyse's throne room, skeletal fingers steepled before it, processing reports that confirm what it already calculated. The containment zone is stabilizing. The free galaxy is stabilizing differently. Both outcomes fall within acceptable parameters. Mission parameters have been met. False gods eliminated, suffering reduced, stability achieved. And yet, something it hasn't felt since arriving in this universe surfaces in whatever passes for its consciousness. Not satisfaction, not pride, something closer to melancholy. It speaks to the empty air, knowing no one will answer, not caring if they do. I was Satoru Suzuki once, salaryman, guild leader, person who cared about friends and purpose and belonging. Then I became Ainz Ooal, undead overlord, playing the role because my guild needed it. I am administrator, optimizer, function without form, purpose without passion. I have saved billions, liberated millions, built empire without cruelty, and I feel nothing, wonder nothing, am nothing but the sum of my calculations. The admission echoes in empty throne room, confession without priest, and for a moment, just a moment, the crimson flames in those eye sockets flicker, dimming to almost human sadness before resuming their mechanical burn. On Earth, you file your final report on the Ainz Ooal incident, military designation for an event that reshaped galactic civilization. You summarize 2 years of observation, analysis, and uncomfortable truths. The gold fell in less than 3 months. The galaxy stabilized in less than 2 years. Human cost, minimal, compared to any projected liberation scenario. Cost to human spirit, incalculable and ongoing. Your conclusion, Subject Ainz Ooal represents the most complex moral paradox this program has encountered. It is benevolent dictator, efficient administrator, liberator, and jailer simultaneously. It eliminated genuine evil and replaced it with something that works, something that saves lives, something that makes billions of people materially better off while spiritually diminished. We cannot call it victory. We cannot call it defeat. We can only acknowledge that it happened, that it changed us, and that we must now navigate a galaxy divided not by war, but by philosophy. The eternal question of whether it's better to be free and struggling, or comfortable and controlled. For Earth, we chose freedom. History will judge whether we chose wisely. General Hammond signs off on your report, files it in archives that will be classified for 50 years, and stands at his window, watching the Stargate below. Chevrons lock, teams depart. The work continues, but every
Gods, crewing them up for us.
And now half the galaxy looks at Ainz's zone and thinks we're idiots for not taking the deal. Hammond nods slowly. Maybe we are. Maybe in 1,000 years, historians will look back and say humanity chose poorly, that we prioritized pride over pragmatism. But you know what, Jack? We got to choose. That's what matters. The people in the containment zone, they live better lives, objectively, but they didn't choose them. We did, and that makes all the difference, even if it shouldn't. Even if it's irrational. Even if it's irrational. Even if we're paying in blood for a principle that undead efficiency would call obsolete. The two men stand in silence, watching the gate activate again,
sending another team out into the messy, dangerous, gloriously uncertain free galaxy. And somewhere, beyond the partition, Ainz Ooal processes another governance report with mechanical precision, eternal administrator of a perfect machine, having achieved everything and feeling nothing, trapped by its own success in a paradise it built but cannot enjoy. The galaxy learned a lesson in those 2 years, not about power, not about freedom, but about the price of salvation when it arrives, wearing a skull. Sometimes the scariest tyrant is the one who genuinely wants to help, and the hardest prison to escape is the one with open doors, because why would you leave when everything inside works so perfectly? The silent god taught the galaxy efficiency. The galaxy taught itself that some inefficiencies are worth preserving, and in the space between those truths, civilization continues, messy, beautiful, broken, free, and forever divided by the question that has no answer. What price is too high for peace?